Hello, everybody, and welcome into the 75th edition of Texas Longhorns Live. As always, Matthew Miller and Gerald Goodrich joining you on a Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We are going to be breaking down the Vandy game, but before we move forward, let's move back a little bit and let's talk about Texas versus Mississippi State. Gerald, I will let you kick this off. What did you think of the Longhorns' performance?
Yeah, it's hard to it's been 3 days and I still can't get all of my thoughts together because what we saw Texas do in the fourth quarter, I really loved, but the three previous quarters that they did to get into that position was embarrassing, inexcusable, those types of whatever words you want to say. It's I don't know. And really, I think my biggest issue with this game was the defensive approach. Honestly, Pete Kwiatkowski has been pretty unimpeachable this whole year. And this specific scheme, I didn't understand it, especially the lack of adjustment that they made to what Mississippi State was doing underneath. Their receivers are fast. Mississippi State is one thing they got fast receivers, but playing 7 yards off the ball when it's 3rd and 4 or 3rd and 5, playing that soft is pretty frustrating for me because Mississippi State that's what the offense is meant to do, is just find grass and get the ball out quick. And that's what they did. And so that to me was a frustrating thing to watch. And the Texas defense maybe needed one of these games where they struggle a bit and have to clamp down and kind of lock in. And you saw them lock in the fourth quarter where, they forced, it was, I think, punt, field goal and punt, end of game, and then a stop. So that, great way to end it. But what they did, and part of it's probably because they were a little gassed. Mississippi State had a significant advantage in the total plays in the first half. So there was a lot to, I think, left to be desired. I'm also curious the health of the running backs, or the health of what's going on. They still seem really sparse and sparing with what they're doing with Trey Wisner and CJ Baxter. So I'm not sure, you only had 21, I think, carries by a running back, or called carries by a running back. So that's not a big number. But ultimately, Texas got the win. Arch Manning played his best game of the year, probably best game of his career thus far. Looked in control of the offense, looked like he could operate it really well, and is finally figuring out how to work. And again, a lot of that seemed to even accelerate when Texas got into that accelerated package at the end. So hopefully Steve Sarkisian has learned from that and kind of gets a scheme going that makes Arch feel comfortable quickly.
Yeah, what I took away is look at the halves and how they were dictated by each opponent. The team that was more aggressive in each half was the more successful team in that half. Texas was by far the more aggressive team on both sides of the ball in the second half. Mississippi State was the far more aggressive team in the first half, and they won that half pretty easily. 49 plays in that half, guys. I mean, if that continued at 100 play pace, Texas would not have won that football game. That was a wild pace that they were on and was super concerning. Luckily, we did get that in check. The defense did play a little bit better in the second half, but I agree. I thought the game plan overall was not very good. I think it was one of the worst of Pete Kwiatkowski's career. The last time I kind of felt like that was Oklahoma a couple years ago, where we kind of just completely forgot Dylan Gabriel could run the football, and he just took up the middle and rushed for 110 yards in that game.
Yeah.
This game was more of, hey, we're just going to play off and let these guys underneath get the ball. And then once they have the ball, they're really athletic and really fast. They're going to run by us. So I didn't really understand that. I think with smaller, faster guys, yeah, they can burn you if you press them. But if you get physical and stop them just a split second, it's going to be pretty good. For you, we weren't able to do that for whatever reason. We didn't try to do that. So that does stink, but hopefully we learn from it. Hopefully we get better about it. And I brought up in the group chat that we have, I didn't understand why we didn't blitz at all in the first half. We blitzed in the second half, and it worked. We got pressure because I don't think their offensive line is very good. And Shapen, he was way too comfortable in the first half, way too comfortable. And when we got pressure on him, he did not look good. He did not look comfortable because that guy's not super mobile in the pocket. Basically, once you got back there, the play kind of ended. So overall, I think it was a good, solid win for Texas. I think Arch Manning, like you said, had the best game of his career. I think it sucks that he got hurt in this game because this is kind of a performance you can build off of. And if he's hurt, obviously you can't build off that type of performance. So we'll have to see what happens with that. Obviously, he entered concussion protocol. I don't know how concussion protocol works. The pros have a certain way of, it's an outside doctor. I don't think college has that. I know he has to practice full time by Thursday. We'll see if that happens. If not, it's going to be pretty interesting. But overall, I think Texas did enough to get the win. And that's kind of what we've seen the last 2 weeks, guys. This hasn't been a dominant performance by the Texas Longhorns. You know, the Stats of War comes out, every Monday, and he puts up the graphic, how much did you truly win by? And Texas, on the right side is, oh, you won by a lot. The left side is, oh, you didn't win or you shouldn't have won, basically. Texas has been on the left side of that graph twice. Last week was more, or 2 weeks ago was much worse versus Kentucky, but this week was not much better versus Mississippi State. So we got to figure that out. We got to get that ball rolling quicker. It is what it is. We'll figure it out. And you don't apologize for wins. In general, you definitely don't apologize for wins in the SEC. So overall, really good for Texas to get the win. Again, I think this team needs to be more aggressive in their approach on both sides of the ball. When, again, the best team we played, Oklahoma, guys. It was Oklahoma. And what did we do in both those games? On the defense side of the ball, we decided to blitz more. On the offense side of the ball, we ran tempo, and that was how we were aggressive. We didn't push it down the field. I would rather see us run more tempo than push it down the field. We'll have to see if that changes at all. I don't know what Sark's going to be willing to do and change because, let's be honest here, 12 personnel has not worked at all this year. And he stuck with it. I think this team is an 11 personnel up-tempo team with 1 to 2 deep shots a game, not 6 deep shots a game, and that's what we're doing right now. I don't think you can get away with that versus the better front fours that you're going to play down the stretch here. You're not going to get away with it versus Texas A&M. You're not going to get away with it versus Georgia, and you're not going to get away with it versus Vanderbilt. I think this might have been one of the last teams you can get away with it, trying to force these deep shots down the field. Arkansas, you can probably get away with it because that defense is horrendous. But you're not going to be able to get away with it in 75% of the games moving forward. And you have to win, throughout the last 4 games, in my opinion, to have a chance of making the college football playoff. If you don't win throughout the last 4, you're not making the college football playoff, period. You have to go at least 9-3 to do so. So I think Texas should be more aggressive in their approach defensively with blitzing, more aggressive with the tempo on offense, not aggressive pushing the ball down the field. I don't really love that, but those are the 2 ways I see Texas being more aggressive going forward, and I think they should be.
Yeah, I think part of Pete Kwiatkowski's lack of aggression maybe against Mississippi State is just how outmatched the Mississippi State offensive line was against Texas's edges, and you saw them kind of pick them apart later in the game. So I wonder if, giving them different looks, but I think you're absolutely right. And I said it on Saturday after the game. It's interesting to me, frustrating to me, curious to me, how Texas doesn't have the caliber of athlete that you can trust to play like a press man situation or a press situation. And when they do, they seem to get burnt like routinely. It's like, I don't know what that is or what kind of, corners they're recruiting or not recruiting, but like that is a problem because at some point you need to be able to play some man coverage. And we even saw Texas best corner, Manny Muhammad, got burned on a press man situation. So like, I don't know if it's a scheme issue, if it's a technique issue, if it's a just kind of skill issue. I'm not sure what it is, but that's something that I think they need to remedy sooner rather than later, because you are going to have to be in some man situations. And we've now seen, I think, the few times it goes poorly for Texas.
No, 100%. I mean, yeah, Malik Muhammad's going to be a top 100 pick in the NFL. He should be able to get up there, jam the wide receiver, and play good coverage from there on. And he wasn't. He got burnt twice in that game. It was probably his worst game since the Clemson game overall. And I think that's pretty interesting, too. What I'm worried about, and this is a next year problem, but I think they have to hit the portal in the offseason because we've seen when Michael Tapp was out, we got burnt pretty bad versus Mississippi State. When Malik Muhammad was out versus Florida, we got burnt pretty bad. So when we're not perfectly healthy back there, teams are able to take advantage of that. So we have to find someone back there, for next year especially, if anything happens, and in this game coming up versus Vanderbilt, because you cannot get away playing really high-level competition if you're not able to get up and press.
Yeah, and I mean, that is Vanderbilt's going to present a different problem, I think, for Texas in some ways, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But ultimately, like, I think part of the lack of aggression is because Texas doesn't necessarily have and again, it's still weird to me that Texas doesn't have the bodies or confidence in the guys to play some man, because you have to play a little bit of man if you're going to run some really aggressive, really complicated blitz packages. So I just don't know what the issue is, because that is not a thing that should happen at Texas. And it's not really a thing that's happened in the past at Texas. Even when Texas wasn't great, they've always had pretty decent defensive backs that were able to, run with guys. So again, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because we've kind of switched problems. We used to have the issue of not being able to play the ball in the air when it was thrown, and we get defensive
Yeah.
pass interference or holding or not being able to intercept a ball that should have been intercepted. That really isn't the case now. When they're there, they're in position, they make good plays on the ball. Now they just can't keep up with like the shorter, smaller guys. So can we find the middle ground here and do both? I don't know. We'll have to see. But that seems
It's
to be
hard.
the
It's
biggest
hard to
thing.
do both. It's
Yeah,
hard to
it
do
is.
both. It's hard to be good at everything.
That is true. But hey, I've seen Alabama have freak cornerbacks. I've seen Georgia have freak cornerbacks. Can we get one or two of our own? We haven't had the last guy that could kind of do both. I mean, obviously Jahdae Barron, but before that it was Holton Hill. That was really
Yeah.
the last guy. So it's
Yeah.
been a while.
It has been. It has been. And again, this was DBU for a long time. So I think Texas needs to get back to that for sure.
100%. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. We just recapped the Mississippi State game. Now let's ask this question because I think it needs to be asked because I do not know if Arch Manning is going to play in this football game. Can Texas beat Vandy without Arch? I'm going to, throw that out there to you, Gerald, first. Do you think Texas can beat Vandy with Matthew Caldwell as the quarterback?
Such an easy question. No, and I don't necessarily know how much the game plan has to change with or without Arch because Mississippi State, the way Mississippi State is going to play this game, the way they played all of their games, they're going to try to keep Texas offense off the field, right? That's what Vandy does, right? They try to keep the opponent off the field. They milk the clock. They press that advantage, and ultimately, like Texas is going to have to hit big plays because. That's the question now. I think Texas athletes, man to man, regardless of who's the quarterback, can out athlete the guys at Vandy. But can they capitalize on that? Are they able to? I don't know if the questions that I have change with the quarterback. It's really the way to say it. Like the things that worry me about Texas are slow starts and empty frames, right? Because you're going to get so few possessions in this game. So whether it's Arch Manning, because Texas had that issue with Arch Manning, can Texas avoid the slow starts? Can Texas avoid turning in a whole quarter without, crossing the 50? That question is there regardless of who it is. Now, that being said, Matthew Caldwell is a solid. When we've seen him, he's a solid quarterback. He's got good and Vandy's defense is not all that great. Like it's a good defense, right? But their defense is buoyed by the fact that they're rarely on the field. They're on the field less than any other team you're going to play. So part of the issue there is like again. Can Matthew Caldwell operate the offense in a way that's just like hit the layups, right? Hit the easy ones when you're on the field, get the ball to your athletes in space and let them be athletes. Can Texas win at the point of attack? Like those are the things that don't really necessarily change for me, whoever the quarterback is. And honestly, maybe Matthew Caldwell hits some of the easier layups early on to get the offense going in rhythm and to get some running room because I do think the running backs are going to have a lot to say about this game.
No, I agree. I actually think for this game, Matthew Caldwell might actually be a little bit better of an option as long as he doesn't try to do things outside of his nature. And what I mean by that is Arch Manning is pretty good with, trying to create out of, the play itself. When the play's dead, he doesn't stop. He goes, finds a way to make a play. I don't need Matthew Caldwell doing that in this game. In fact, if he does that in this game, I actually think Texas loses this football game if he is the starting quarterback. I just need him to operate the offense efficiently. Now, again, to win big-time games like versus A&M and Georgia, you can't do that. You can't just nickel and dime your way down the field and expect to win 17-13. You're not going to win the football game that way. I do think you can do that versus Vanderbilt because, like you said, I don't think their defense is that good. They're only good because their offense stays on the field the whole time. So it's going to be really up to me. The defense is going to have to be the major thing. And coming off a really bad performance, they're going to have to get back to their old selves. You're going to have to stop this team on third down. If you can stop this team on third down and put their defense out there and expose them more, I think Texas has a chance to have some explosive plays like a swing pass to Ryan Wingo that he breaks and goes for 40 to 50 yards. I think you can do that. I do need the offensive line to be healthy, though. That's what scares me actually the most because DJ Campbell apparently does have leg swelling. He did come back in the game. He needs to be healthy because if we're throwing Matthew Caldwell behind Connor Stroh, Connor Robertson, and Nick Brooks, not a recipe for success. Because I will say Vanderbilt's defensive line is the best unit on their defense, in my opinion. So Miles Capers, I believe his name is a all SEC type player, guys. He's got like 9.5 tackles for loss and 4.5 sacks. That guy will eat if we allow him to versus that offensive line. So running game has to get going a little bit. Does not need to be great. Can you give me 3.5, 4 yards per carry consistently? Can Matthew Caldwell hit these efficient throws? And if he does that, I think we can beat Vanderbilt with Matthew Caldwell. But I mean, it's still a big task. This is a really solid football team. This is without a doubt a top 15 football team in the country by the end of the year. That's probably what they're going to end up as. And they can definitely beat Texas.
Yeah, I would honestly love to see a game plan similar to what Stark did for OU with this game, where it's a lot of side to side, a lot of getting the ball in your playmakers' hands in space. Because again, Vanderbilt has a good defense, but I don't think they have an athlete that can match up with a Ryan Wingo. They don't have an athlete that can match up with DeAndre Moore or Ryan Niblett in space, right? They don't have those guys. So like that to me has to be the game plan. If I get those guys in space, hit crossing routes underneath, find a guy in the flat. Again, that to me is the game plan that wins this game, regardless of the quarterback. And I think, again, Matthew Caldwell has shown that he can put the ball on a spot if he needs to. You don't want him to have to make 4, 5, 6, 7 big time throws in the game. But if he can hit the layups, make 1 or 2 big time throws on a 3rd and medium, 3rd and long, it's a very winnable game. And there's a reason why Sark went after him when he did. There's a reason why. Like, they needed him and they thought that he had the tools to operate the offense. So I feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting, too, because if Arch is, in fact, hurt, Matthew Caldwell is a good athlete. He can run the ball, but you're not going to have quarterback design runs because if he gets knocked out, then you're going to KJ Lacey. So that does neuter you there. It also does, if Arch Manning does play, you don't want this guy to get back-to-back concussions 2 weeks in a row. So I don't think we're going to run him as much, even though I would love to run him in this style of football game, both of these guys. If you absolutely have to, you can do it. I'm just saying you're not going to see 6+ runs designed for either of these guys. Especially if it's Matthew Caldwell, because again, you cannot go to KJ Lacey in this football game. You will lose the football game if your 3rd string quarterback is playing in this game. Vanderbilt, guys, the easiest comparison I can make. They are a much highly elevated Kentucky. That's what they are. They want to control the line of scrimmage, control the clock. Kentucky was able to do that versus Texas, but their offense is abysmal. They're not a good football team. Vanderbilt does that, they will win this football game by 10+ points because they are a good football team. So we have to control the line of scrimmage. We have to control the tempo. And I think we can do that with Matthew Caldwell. I really do. So, Gerald, I will ask you this question. I'm not going to ask for the score with Matthew Caldwell, but what percentage do you give Texas of winning this game with Matthew Caldwell compared to Arch Manning?
I mean, I still think it's probably, again, I feel like a 60-40. I think it's still either, I think it's probably, and again, so much of it is the Texas defense. I think Texas's defense matches up really well with what Vanderbilt wants to do. And I also think, again, athlete to athlete, I still think Texas probably is, has the advantage there and get those guys in space. Cause again, I don't know if there's a guy on Vandy's roster that can run with the horses that Texas has if they get in a rhythm.
No, I think that's fair. I kind of look at it as it's like 55-45 for me, and it kind of flips. If Matthew Caldwell's the starter, I think it's 55-45 Vandy. If Arch started 55-45 Texas, I think Arch does make a difference, especially with his legs and his physicality that he brings. Matthew Caldwell's not running anyone over. He'll be able to run around some people, but he's not able to lower his shoulder and get that extra yard. And again, in this type of game, that extra 1 to 2 yards can win you the football game. So that's how I feel about this game with Matthew Caldwell. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below and let us know in the comment sections how you feel if Matthew Caldwell plays this game for Texas. Now, let's get into the comments real quick. David Keith Williams, with or without Arch Manning, I don't think Texas needs to design runs against Vanderbilt. The QB just needs to take advantage of the defense when the pocket breaks down. I agree with that, but again, you can't be aggressive with that either, even if it's off script running, because you still get hurt that way. So that's what I'm saying. It's just a dangerous concept to run your 2nd string quarterback in any scenario in this game.
And I think with how poorly Texas has run the ball with its running backs, I think there's got to be something there. Because again, then look at the numbers, like opponent adjusted efficiency. Vandy is somewhere in like the 60s defensively. So like they're not expected to be good, as good as the athletes Texas has. So, but there is a need to get some sort of running game. You don't want to end up like OU, where your quarterback is all of your running game. And it's trending that way at this point. So there's got to be something on the ground to keep the defense honest.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, if we can get somewhere like Let's say Baxter and Wisner give us 25 carries for 80 yards. Honestly, I'll take that at this point. Like, it's not good, but it's way
No.
better than we've done in most of the games so far. And that's
Yeah,
something I'd sign it. Like, if someone laid the paper down right in front of me to sign that contract, I'm doing it right now because I think we can win the football game with that.
I think it's fair.
Let's move over to this. It was talked about. Sark shot it down, but you have to talk about it once it's out there. Top 5 candidates to replace Steve Sarkisian if it were to happen. Guys, I think this is a 5 to 10% chance at most. I do not think this is going to happen, but it was odd that it came out. It was odd that Jimmy Sexton emphatically shot it down. That has never been done by that agency ever.
Any
But
agency, I don't think.
yeah, exactly. And it's weird that it was the Titans. Why was that thrown out there? So that's the weird thing to me, that a specific job was thrown out there. Yeah, I know that's the only one really open right now, but we all know there's going to be the Dolphins should be open. It would shock me if they keep their coach. The Bengals could be open. The Browns could be open. There's so many jobs that could be open. I want to know, maybe that was the only reason because it's open, but we'll talk about it. So, Gerald, I'll let you start. Number 5, who's your 5th candidate to take the Texas job if Steve Sarkisian leaves?
Yeah, and I want to say, like I said after the game on Saturday, like, if Sark's agents are not actively floating his name out there for things, then they're not doing their jobs right. Because that's, like, anybody that knows Sark and knows the landscape knows he wants to, he would entertain any pro option because that's just who he is, right? But are we going like our wish list or like actual candidates? I want to make sure I've got both, but you want to go wish list or actual candidates?
So what I did was I just did it based on, like, number 5, I'm going to be straight up honest, wish list. Then I have 4 like real candidates. So I kind of did both as well.
Okay, so my wish list candidate number 1 is honestly probably Dan Lanning. My actual number 1 candidate, or I guess we'll go number 5, is Alex Golesh at USF. I really like Alex Golesh. I like his attitude. I think he's a guy who is built to connect with the younger kids that are coming in now. He's kind of a direct, no BS kind of guy, and he's won games. Like, he's done really good with the talent at USF. His offensive scheme is pretty significantly different from what Texas is running now. There's a lot more emphasis on the quarterback run. But I like the program he's running. He's got a good thing going at USF. And I think he's going to be a hot candidate for a lot of jobs coming open. So Alex Golesh should be somebody that, if the eventuality happens, and that's a realistic candidate, I think, for Texas.
Yeah, I would not hate that at all. I like him a lot. I think it's funny because you can look up a clip of Alex Golesh and Tom Herman shaking hands after the game. They do not like each other. Words were said, let's put it that way. So it'd be kind of funny to hire the guy that Tom Herman hates. And honestly, they kind of run a similar offense. Like, they run their, like you said, run their quarterback a lot, kind of want a bruiser at quarterback. So pretty interesting. Number 5 for me is Nick Saban. If the call is not made, it would make no sense to me. You have to make the call. You have to give him a Godfather offer. I think there's honestly 3 jobs he would consider. I'm not saying he takes them. I'm thinking he would pause and be like, and actually think about it. I think Texas is one of those jobs. I think it's Texas, LSU, and Alabama. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But if DeBoer went sour there, 100%, I think he'd go right back if he got a good enough offer. So I think those are the 3 jobs. But I went with Nick Saban for number 5. I'll jump over to my number 4. It's kind of in the same vein as you with Alex Golesh. Will Stein, Oregon. I think he's going to be the next big coordinator hire somewhere. I don't know who's going to give him the opportunity. Honestly, if I'm Penn State, I've heard other names thrown around in their circle. If you can't get a big name, this is the guy I would fall back on. I think he's done a phenomenal job with Oregon. They do not miss a beat offensively. It's been plug and replace there, and they're always in the top 10 in the country. And I think he runs a really good scheme. It's kind of like Sark on steroids. It's a lot of screens, a lot of short passes with an extreme amount of speed on the outside. So I went with Will Stein.
Yeah, and he knows Austin. He knows the area. He knows the recruiting ground. So I think it's not a bad choice as well. My number 4, again, this is probably more pie in the sky. Like, Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri, I think, is a guy who, and frankly, I'm going to say it, like, he knows how to play the NIL game at a level that I think Texas probably needs and wants from a guy who's going to be that. And he is more of a CEO type guy as a head coach. And that's really what it takes to win at this point. Like, you don't really need, like, my worry about a guy like Will Stein is, like, is he going to want to run the offense or is he going to hand it off? Right. Those are the types of questions that I have with a guy like Will Stein, but Eli Drinkwitz very clearly is not that coach. He's really running the CEO type. He seems equipped for this modern era of NIL based, kind of personality based fundraising, getting donors involved. And he's done a good job at Missouri, but I think with the resources Texas has, I think he could probably take himself to another level.
I think that's completely fair. I have him a little bit higher. Number 3 for me is Kenny Dillingham. What he's doing at Arizona State, which is literally a broke program, guys. You can look at this. They don't have any money there. He has to have, scrape from the bottom of the barrel, and he was able to get the playoffs and almost beat Texas and put together a team that competes their ass off. Like, they could have gave up in that football game easily. They did not. He talked about bringing physicality back in practices. I like everything I hear from him. I like the product on the field. I think he's a really good coach, and I think he can relate to recruits as well. I think that's a big thing. These younger guys are really good at relating, obviously, being in the same age bracket as some of these guys. So I'm going to go with Kenny Dillingham as my number 3. What about number 3 for you, Gerald?
Well, actually, I had Kenny Dillingham as my number 1. So, like, spoiler alert for that.
Okay.
Kenny Dillingham was the top of my list. My number 3, Willie Fritz at Houston. Willie Fritz is a guy who, again, Houston's clicking along. Willie Fritz has been shown to be a program builder. So I don't know how it vibes with like the need to really just maintain, I think, at Texas. But again, I'm looking at guys who are not necessarily involved in like the day-to-day coaching, but really running the operation, running the organization. And Houston isn't the NIL powerhouse that Texas is, but Houston has judiciously spent their NIL money in key spots to land some guys that they needed to, especially in-state guys. Willie Fritz knows the local coaches. He knows the recruiting grounds. And again, he's been able to use some of that sparing NIL fund that Houston has to be able to bolster the roster in specific spots. So again, a guy like that, given the resources that they have at Texas, they could do some really special things.
No, I completely agree. My only issue with him, a little bit older, but he is a really good football coach. Like, he's gotten Houston off the mat. I bet, I mean, that's like one of the 2 win totals I bet in the Big 12, and it already hit because that's how good of a coach he is. And he's got Connor Wegman playing pretty good football as well. Number 2 for me is Eli Drinkowitz. He is like a nerd. You said it the other day in the post-game press conference, or not post-game press conference, but post-game show. But he's a winner. Like, Missouri's not a good football program, and he consistently wins at a high level. I think they have either the 3rd or 4th most wins in the SEC over the past like 3 years. Like, they're winning at an elite level. And if Bo Prabula doesn't get hurt versus Vandy, they could have easily won that football game and still been in the SEC race in the thick of it. So I like Eli Drinkowitz. I think he's a very good football coach. So I have him number 2.
Yeah, I again, I already said Eli Drinkowitz was higher up or lower on my list than yours, but like, again, I think he'd be a great for their job. My number 2 is Eric Morris, who's at North Texas. Again, this is probably not the trendiest pick, but Eric Morris has things going at North Texas. They've got a good thing going. He's shown that he's a guy who can build a program and maintain a program. He's younger. He's from the state, and I'm not necessarily like big on like that he knows the area, and I've said it a bunch of times, but like there is something to be said about recruiting in Texas and knowing the coaches and the coaches knowing you. That's part of why Tom Herman got the ousters, because he had a bad reputation with a lot of the local coaches. And so a guy who comes in and already has some of that, who's been at a lower level and built things up. I don't really want this to be a guy that doesn't have head coaching experience. I think Power 5 head coaching, maybe not a Power 4 head coaching, is not as important, but somebody who's built a program at any level, like building a program is building a program, and giving them the additional resources that come with Texas. I'd be curious to see what he does.
No, I don't hate that. I wish he could get a mid-tier job and then go to Texas. That's my only thing, because jumping from North Texas to Texas is a big jump. Just, what's on your plate at North Texas compared to Texas. But I would be fine with that to give someone a chance, because he's doing a really good job, and the quarterback they have is a really good player too. So that's going to be interesting, where I don't think either of those guys are going to last very long at North Texas. Number 1 for me, listen, I don't really like this guy, but he's starting to grow on me more and more. And I've said some things like I don't think he's ever going to win a national championship. But I think Lane Kiffin would slide into Steve Sarkisian's spot pretty easily. I really do. And guess what? He's already given up play calling duties. He's already figured that part of the puzzle out, where Sark hasn't. So we wouldn't have to worry about that. The thing he said today, I found hilarious. For anyone that wants to look it up, just look up Lane Kiffin, Brent Venables. Basically, a reporter asked him, people have been saying Oklahoma's a better team. And he went on a rant saying, oh, were they better this year? And then he talked about when he was an assistant coach at Alabama. Oh, were they better back then when he was at Clemson? I guess they've just been better all the time. They just can't beat me. So when he said that, I was like, okay, well, you're saying that. You already hate Oklahoma enough. You can come over and be the head coach at Texas. And I think, he's starting to win some bigger games the last 2 years. He beat Georgia. He beat Oklahoma on the road. We'll see what they do, because they're going to get in the playoffs with the schedule they have. We'll see what happens when they get there, because their offense have been explosive. Guys, Trinidad Chambliss was a Division II last year, and he's balling out in that offense. So it would not hurt me to see Lane Kiffin come to Texas. And I can't believe I'm saying that because I said 2 to 3 years ago I didn't really like him, but I think he's a good football coach.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that program moving in the right direction. He's got there's a, you could see, if you squint, you can see the similarities with Sark. I think the personality difference, that's the one thing I always am curious about with a guy like Lane coming to Austin. There is, again, you can Google all the conversations about his personal life and the personal goings on. And I don't know if that guy could fly in Austin, but from a football coach standpoint, again, he's used to the SEC grind. He's used to dealing with a toxic booster culture at Ole Miss. Cause like, that's, something that you're probably gonna have to deal with at Texas as well. So it probably wouldn't be my first choice, but if, again, Lane's going to get a bunch of offers this offseason, and if Texas is open, they probably do make the call. I already told you my number one was Kenny Dillingham. What he has done with what Arizona State is and where they were when he took over is nothing short of a masterclass. Like, they were in the dirt when he got there, and they built him up. He built that program up on evals, on development. And that's been some of the issue with Texas right now is did they miss on some of the evals? Are they self-scouting really well? And one of the things I love about Kenny Dillingham is, like, he seems like a really self-aware guy, and he seems like a guy who's willing to own his stuff, right? You go back and listen to his post-game after the playoff game where Texas won. He was like, that's on the coaching. That's not on the players. Like, we didn't coach them to check out of that when the offense checked, right? He owned that loss on himself. And that's the kind of leader that guys want to follow, that people want to play for. And ultimately, I think he's got the personality, and he's got the vibe. He's got that. He's a fast riser at coach. Wherever he lands, he's going to land somewhere in the next couple of years. They're going to be much better for it. And again, if Texas needs a coach, I would love to have Kenny Dillingham.
No, and look what he did with, like, players Texas didn't think was going to play for Texas. Prince Dobro played really well in that game for them last year, and he's played pretty well for them this year. Xavier Alford played really, I think he had an interception in that game, if I'm not mistaken, versus Texas. So, like, he's taking guys that other big time programs don't want, and they're playing really well when they get there. So again, he does a really good job of seeing someone that someone else is taking for granted and turning them into a good football player. So I don't disagree with that. My top four, like my top five, obviously I would like them all, but yeah, my top four that are realistic, I would be fine with any of them coming to Texas, giving it a try. Now I'll ask this question. Is there anyone that you could see Texas calling that you just like stay away from?
I don't know. Like, Del Conte seems so shrewd that, like, I don't really feel like there's something I'm like, no, don't call him. There's the obvious like meme ones, like don't call Jimbo, right? Like, don't call Jimbo. don't call Brian Kelly. There's those like jokey ones, but I think James Franklin is going to end up at a Power 4 job here pretty quick. I don't know if Austin is the right place for him. That's one that, like, he's going to land somewhere and it's going to be a pretty decent landing for him. So that's one that I'm like, I wouldn't love, just because I've been close to Penn State fans that have cheered for James Franklin teams. And they're very frustrated. So I can't think of anybody like real off the top of my head though.
No, I'm kind of in the same way. I think Texas with NIL and everything, I think it would be hard for me to come up with more than a list of 7-8 names that they have to go past, honestly. It kind of shocked me. The guy that I think the time has passed, and I did want him before Sark, and I think he would have taken the job, honestly, if the Jaguars job wasn't offered, was Urban Meyer. I do not want him anymore. I do not think he can work in the modern day of college football, but, I mean, he was fantastic for his day, but I just don't think it would work now.
No, and I also think he's, again, the personal things aside, I think he's probably not a good fit for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. We really appreciate it. David Keith Williams chiming in again. First, I wonder if Coach Shanahan would consider coaching at Texas if the position became vacant. Second, is it surprising that neither of you mentioned Coach Traylor? Listen, no NFL coach is coming back to college. It ain't happening. Kyle Shanahan's probably making, I haven't checked, but I bet he's making somewhere between $15 to $20 million, and he has far less work to do. And that guy, if he got fired, would find an NFL job the next day. Like, he is a supreme play caller. He's a supreme winner. That team has been at least above 500 every year, if not competing for the Super Bowl. No chance he would come to Texas. Unfortunately, I would love him, but he's not coming to Texas.
Yeah. He's on that dream list, right? He's on that dream list with like a Dan Lanning or a Kalen DeBoer, or like Eli Drinkwitz. Like, he's on that list. Like, I would love to have him. The thing with Traylor, I'm of a couple of minds of Jeff Traylor because I think Jeff Traylor is a guy who would do, if this wasn't the NIL transfer portal area, I would jump at Jeff Traylor because he's a guy who knows Texas high schools. He knows Texas coaches. They're going to want him to recruit their guys. But I just post Frank Harris, I haven't loved what I've seen at UTSA. It's been very up and down, very inconsistent, even with the latter years of Frank Harris in that program. Like, again, you shouldn't, and this is my soapbox, and I live in the San Antonio area. Like, Texas State and UTSA should not have to drive longer than about 90 minutes and have a roster full of guys who can play football. And I just haven't seen that from either of those teams this year. And it's really frustrating as somebody who grew up playing football in Central Texas, who watched a lot of guys that probably should have ended up at programs like that, not get recruited and end up having to go the career route after high school. Like, those guys should not have to drive. Like, San Antonio, everything I-35 south of San Marcos is woefully under recruited. There are dudes in that area that can play some freaking football. So, like, you should not have to drive longer than 90 minutes in either direction to recruit to those schools. And I just haven't seen Jeff Traylor doing that to the level I want post Frank Harris. Like, his early stuff, like when he had guys from Judson and Cibolo Steele and Clemens and downtown San Antonio SAISD schools, like, they looked really good, but like, I don't know what happened post Frank. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, I forget what the philosophy or concept is called, but, we do this with every profession. We promote people to their level of incompetence, and then we fire them. I kind of feel like Jeff Traylor is perfect for where he's at. I don't really think he should get any higher. I don't think he should get any lower. I think, honestly, he should be a lifer at UTSA. I think he's done a solid job there, and I think they're fine with having him.
If Jeff Traylor stays at UTSA, they should build a statue. Like, what he's done with that program, they started it up. Like, they restarted it in recent memory. Like, it has been an incredible coaching job for him. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, I don't know what the jump up from that is. I think it's probably similar level. Like, is it at a UNT or is it? I don't know what that looks like, but that's a whole separate conversation. I love Coach Traylor. I live in San Antonio. I've taken my kids to UTSA games. It's super fun. But from a what I need from a Texas coach in this current era, I just don't know if he's that guy. Again, pre-NIL, pre-transfer portal era, I jump at it because of the deep ties he has in Texas. He's the Texas High School Football Coaches Association guy. He wears the hats. He wears the logos. Like, I love that about him 15 years ago as a Texas coach.
Yeah, honestly, he's a guy that I could see Texas Tech, if they fired Joey McGuire, getting, and I think would fit pretty well there. I think that's the one spot I could see him there.
I could see him being good at that. I'm curious. Again, GJ Kinney is another guy that I'm curious where he ends up. Where, again, he's a guy that I wonder what his upward trajectory is, because he's somebody that I think would maybe jump into like a P5 coordinator role and then jump into the big seat. So that's another one that I think, if you ask me in 5 years, I would be curious about that.
Baylor's going to open up because they are effing terrible. I'm shocked Dave Aranda has not been fired yet. He's not very good. And I think, honestly, LSU could assemble another great staff. They just bring him back and hire a good offensive coordinator. So I could see that happening, but he has not been a good head coach at Baylor. So I could see GJ Kinney jump in there, or even Jeff Traylor. Those are two names I could see going to Baylor.
I would hate those guys at Baylor. I would hate those guys because recruiting Central Texas, like North Central Texas, gets so much harder with either of those guys there. It's awful.
That is true. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. It really helps us out. Now, let's jump into this. Texas versus Vandy. Vandy is 7-1, guys. Not many people probably predict that at the beginning of the year. Maybe some people would. 3-1 in the SEC. Texas is favored, though. This opened at 3. It is down to 1.5, so it is getting bet in the opposite direction. But, hey, the public's betting on Vandy. That works out for the other team most of the time. So, Vanderbilt, 9th in the country points per game, 4th in the country yards per game on offense, 6th in the country in yards per play, 7 yards per play, 3rd down percentage, 8th in the country. Guys, this is just a super efficient, good offense. There's nothing special about it. They line up, they beat you at what they do best, and they keep the ball and chains moving, and they eventually get to the red zone. I will say this is the weakness. They're 48th in the red zone. So if you want to play the game of that, you just let them drive down the field and stop them, fine, but you also deal with too much time comes off the clock. So, again, got to stop them on 3rd down, even though they're elite at converting. Diego Pavia does it all for them. 20 total touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 68.8% completion percentage. Zed Alexander, I thought, was a pretty good back, and he's taking it kind of to another level. He's got 10 total touchdowns between receiving and rushing, 388 yards rushing, 5.3 yards per carry. Texas would love to have those numbers from the running back at this point. He's a good back. And then Eli Stowers, their best player on offense, in my opinion. 31 receptions, 397 yards, 12.8 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. Wide receiver, it's Junior Sherrill and a bunch of guys, honestly, so you got to stop him as well. But this is a good offense, and they're, like Sark said, they don't do anything special, but they're just super, super efficient.
Yeah, and I think the stats that you left out that I want to call into the conversation are, and this is going to sound weird as I say it, they are number 133 in plays per game and number 131 in time per play. They run 60 plays a game, and they take up over 30 seconds per play. Like, they are going to control the ball, or at least that they want to control the ball, right? And that's the thing that, like, when you talk about them being efficient, they're going to hold on to the ball. They're going to boa constrictor this game. Like, that's what they want to do, because when you look at the other side of the ball, you're talking about all their offensive advanced stats. They're number 32 defensively, S&P plus. Number 63 in points per drive, number 60 in opponent adjusted defensive efficiency. Not a good defense. Not a good defense, right? That's why they want to control the ball. They want to control the clock. They want to control the pace. That's why they do that. I think that, to me, is I mentioned it, when we talked at the second topic, can Texas beat Vandy without Arch? Like, the questions I have about the Texas offense don't necessarily change with whoever's at the quarterback, right? Can Texas win at the point of attack? Vanderbilt is actually surprisingly good in the trenches. They're only allowing 2.2 line yards per rush. It's like, they're really good at the point of attack. Now, can Texas lean on these guys? Can they tire them out? Can they get them to a point where they're able to get some space, to get some running room? Can Texas capitalize on the fact that they give up? The explosiveness stats are weird. Like, when you look at advanced stats, but like per completed pass, they're giving up 1.5 points, which is a huge number, right? So, like, they're susceptible to big plays, right? But can Texas control the ball enough to capitalize on that? Can Texas control the ball enough to get that? Because, again, the big fear I have going into this game, Texas's propensity to start slow and Texas' propensity to just dry up for like a quarter, right? Because if you do that against Vanderbilt, you're not getting a ton of bites at the apple. You may get 5 or 6 offensive possessions at most. So, like, you can't go 3 or 4 of those without scoring points and expect to win this game.
No, 100%. And it's very interesting because I don't think there's many teams like Vanderbilt is on purpose, like purposeful with the way they play their offense. There's not many teams like that are that slow. Usually you're slow because, hey, we're not that good offensively, so we're going to slow this down a lot. And hope we win in a fluky way. That's kind of what Kentucky did versus us. No, Vanderbilt's like, no, we're good at this, and we're just going to keep doing it, and there's nothing you can do to stop us. And we'd probably be pretty good at running another system if we wanted to as well. So they have actual talent, and they've decided to go with this, which is very odd to me, but it works for them. They're a really good football team. Like you said, Miles Capers along the defensive line for the yards allowed push against. 9 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. He's a really good football player, and they have another good player at the linebacker position in Brian Longwell as well. Secondary is not that great. It's kind of funny. You mentioned all those stats on the defensive side of the ball. They're pretty comparable to what you talked about Mississippi State last week. Like, their defense isn't that much better than Mississippi State. They're just on the field a lot less. So if Texas can stop this offense on third down, guys, we can score and we could blow this game open. Now, can we do that? I don't know, because I've yet to see Texas really do that. And I've not really seen us run the ball enough effectively to do that on the offense side of the ball, especially if it's Matthew Caldwell at the quarterback position. So we haven't played a complete game yet. This would be a hell of a time to have one. We've had complete halves. We've had not even really halves. We've had complete quarters. We saw a complete fourth quarter versus Mississippi State. We saw the defense get 4 stops in a row when they needed it. We saw the offense score multiple times when they needed it. But we've yet to see halves in games from this team. We're going to have at least a really, really good half in this game, in my opinion, to win this football game. If we don't, we're not going to win this football game.
Yeah, and you mentioned getting off the field on third downs. Guess what their worst third down performance of the year was? Alabama, when they lost 30-14, right? Otherwise, they're like almost like they're upwards of 70% in a couple of games. Virginia Tech, they converted on 71% of their third downs, 50% against South Carolina, 60% against Georgia State. Again, I think some of the conversation here is like some of the competition they've played, like you've seen it kind of turn a little bit as the competition has gotten a bit better, right? They feasted on, like early in the season, we thought South Carolina was going to be good. South Carolina is not good. And they beat South Carolina 31-7. So they're riding a bit of that wave. And I'm not saying that they're not a good team, but like when you look at teams that have the talent level like Texas, they had to eke it out against Missouri. And I think if Missouri's quarterback doesn't get hurt, I wonder what that game looks like late, right? LSU, even, who's just fired their head coach, they had to win that one by 7 on a late run by Diego Pavia, right? They got blown out by Alabama. So you see that some of as the talent level rises and they get deeper into SEC play, teams are able to push them a little bit, especially defensively. You know, the opponent's offense versus the Vanderbilt defense, and that's what I think Texas can and should be able to do. Which is again why we're curious about Arch Manning's health, but I think, and I said it kind of in the Matthew Caldwell question, like when you get Texas on the field, if you can get your playmakers into space, there's not a guy on this Vanderbilt defense past the linebacker that I think could run with anybody on this Texas offense. There's not anybody that I think can cause problems for Texas. Now, can the offensive line hold up and give Matthew Caldwell the space he needs to operate and get the ball out? Can the offensive line give the running backs a crease to make it past that front line, that front 7 that they've got? Like those are the big questions for me. Can they do that? Because if you get to that second level, there's a lot of room to work for Texas. And again, the athletes Texas have, there's a reason why, again, Vanderbilt, it's hard to get guys into Vanderbilt. It's hard to get guys into Vanderbilt because of the academic standards. So that's part of the reason why. I keep going back to this. The next 2 teams on the time per play and the plays per game are the service academies, Army and Navy. It's similar situation, right? They're making up for the talent differential with the fact that they're going to milk the ball. So again, if Texas can get the offense in rhythm, I feel confident about it, but that's a big if based on what we've seen this year.
No, I agree. I think, like I said, third down, and then this, guys. If we have the opportunity to take points, take the points. Do not go for it on fourth down. If this is a 45-yard kicking in, it should be automatic. We're kicking the field goal. If it's longer than that, fine. There can be a discussion. But I think you should take the points in this game because points are going to be hard to come by in this football game. I really believe that, especially, again, Matthew Caldwell's the starting quarterback, and we can't get the run game going. So take the points in this game, execute. Penalties will be even bigger. Again, when you have less possessions, your margin gets that much smaller. Mm-hmm. Cannot be committing 8+ penalties in this game. Can we keep it to 4 or 5? We'll see. Gerald, what is your prediction for this game? Does Texas win this football game?
I think they do. I think it's getting back home. I think hopefully we'll have a rejuvenation. We part of the conversation that we haven't had is like Texas has been away from home for a month, and so there's something to be said about playing in front of the home crowd. DKR gets some grief because of its home field atmosphere, but I think fans have been clamoring for this. They haven't had home games since September, right? It's wild to say that out loud. So I think the defense is going to feed off the crowd. I think, the way that Diego Pavia plays, I think Texas has the athleticism to bottle him up a little bit on defense. I think Anthony Hill, Leonga Leifau, Jelani McDonald, those kinds of guys are going to be able to do things that will neutralize some of what Pavia does off script and off kilter. So I think Texas is able to probably take advantage of that. And I think, Texas is a couple of big plays away from winning this game. And I think, again, athlete to athlete, I'll take Texas over Vandy.
I'm going to go Texas 23-20. I think we do win this football game. I think obviously it's going to be a low scoring football game. It's going to be interesting. Like, again, when we find out who the quarterback is, what the game plan is going to be, if it changes at all, depending on who the quarterback is. If DJ Campbell's able to go, Michael Taft will not be able to go in this game. That's already been said. Cole Hudson, don't expect him to be able to go in this game, but I do think Texas squeaks this one out, and you're going to have to go 3 of the last 4 here and win the football games if you want to get into the college football playoff. That should be the goal for Texas, so we'll see if they're able to do that, but I do think they'll be able to squeak it out versus Vandy.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. We really appreciate you guys doing that. Now, let's jump over to the other college football games of the week. Remember, we always do 3 so far on the year. I'm 12-6. Gerald is 9-9. And we'll start out with this one, which at the beginning of the year probably would have been on the top 10 list of games. It is not anymore. Penn State plus 20.5 versus Ohio State. Are you going to take Penn State to cover in this game, Gerald?
I don't think so. It's like 3 scores is so many, but Penn State is just a bad football team, and Ohio State is not a bad football team. Like if I was betting my own money, I'd stay away from this game. 21 is just so many stinking points, but Penn State's gotten blown out by worse teams.
That is true. And actually, nope, I'm forcing you. You got to put your money on this. No, I'm kidding. But I think
talk to my wife about that.
I think I'm going to take – I can't believe I'm going to do this, but Ohio State has covered every game this year. They have. I don't expect that to continue throughout the year. This is a weird year in college football. I think Penn State's going to cover this football game, so I'm going to take Penn State plus 20.5. Do I love it? Absolutely not, because Ohio State could win this game 51-3, and it would not shock me. But I'm going to eat it here. I'm going to say Penn State somehow keeps this close, 20.5. I'll take it. Next up, the world's biggest cocktail party. Completely new coaching staff basically for Florida now, especially on the offense side of the ball. The guys being elevated and who the head coach is. I don't even know who the head coach is in place of Billy Napier right now. Florida's getting 7 points versus Georgia. Not that big of a line. Kind of surprised by it. Both teams coming off a bye. Gerald, who are you taking this game?
I'm taking Georgia. I don't believe in anything Florida's doing. Like, they've got a ton of talent, but I just don't. I just don't buy anything that they've got going on right now. And the post coach pop only lasts so long, and I don't even think they got much of one. So I'm going Georgia here.
I'm going to take Florida. I don't love it, but I'm going to do it because I think they should have beat him last year with DJ Lagway, and he's as healthy as he gets. So I'll take him this year, plus 7. Do I love it again? No, but I have a weird feeling, so I'll take it. Plus 7 for Florida. Next up, OU is getting 3 points on the road versus Tennessee, so these teams are basically a pick 'em if they play it at a neutral site. I rode with OU last week. I'm going to ride with them again. I'm taking a plus 3. I think Tennessee's defense is horrendous. They gave up 35 points to Kentucky. Cutter Boley had, 5 touchdown passes versus Tennessee. I think OU has a chance to blow them out. I think their defense is that bad. So I'm going to take Oklahoma plus 3.
I'm going to go Tennessee. I picked OU last week, and I felt dirty. I picked OU and A&M last week. I felt dirty doing it. So I think I've got to go Tennessee here. I'm still off on John Mateer, and I think until we see, John Mateer is just as liable to throw you out of a game as he is to throw you in a game. And while Tennessee's defense is not great, they also create a ton of havoc in the secondary and on the front lines, and they don't give up a ton of big passing downs. So I think again, I can't pick Oklahoma 2 weeks in a row. That's the other reason. Like, I just can't do it.
That's fair. I almost went the same way. This is the game I feel the least confident about, honestly. Actually, Penn State, Ohio State is, and then this one. I actually feel pretty confident Florida can cover versus Georgia. But, hey, if we're on the opposite side of all these, so if I lose all of them, you win all of them, we're tied. It'll be 12-9. So that could happen by the end of this week.
We're coming back. Guys, we're coming back.
You are. Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. We really appreciate you guys joining us. Remember, we are here every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and then Brandon and Josh are here every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time, so please check them out. Let's jump into the comments real quick before we end this. Ohio State beat Texas by 7, and their next closest game was by a margin of 18. Yeah, they've blown out literally every team they played, and what they held. I mean, their defense is having it. 2021 Georgia success. Like, they're giving up like 5.5 points per game. They're insane on defense.
Yeah, they're really good. I think Penn State's just a very bad football team.
Yeah, they are. I'm buying into the coaching hype. Whoever the coach is, he's going to get them right for this one game. That's how I feel. We'll see,
okay. I love it.
Victor says, I read this before I put it up here, but sometimes you just need to back up from all the data analysis. Remember, we're texting their Vanderbilt. That would be my locker room game speech. Listen, I don't think that speech would work, honestly, but if you wanted to say it, you could say it.
I mean, I think there is something to be tapped into, like the pride of putting on that burnt orange and the pride of like having that Longhorn on the side of your helmet. And I'll never forget like when Texas started struggling with like Kansas State, you kind of in the Charlie Strong, Tom Herman era, Texas started struggling with Baylor, seeing former Texas players like, we don't lose to those teams. Like they would say that on social media or on TV, right? You don't lose to Baylor. You don't lose to Kansas State. You don't like, and so like there is something to be said about tapping into the pride of being a Texas Longhorn. And there's something to be said about tapping into the pride of wearing that and walking on the field of DKR. There's a very slim number of people. Every kid that plays football, I say every kid, like a lot of the kids that play football in the state of Texas dream about doing what you're doing right now. Like go out and show them why. Like I like where your head is at. I wouldn't go exactly that route, but I like where your head is at, right? Like every kid that laces it up in South Texas wants to go play at the University of Texas. I played one game in Austin, one high school game on that field for a high school football playoff game. It was the highlight of my life. Like every kid dreams of playing on that field.
No, I think that's fair. I just don't think, listen, this isn't your grandmother's, well, it is your grandmother's Vanderbilt because that was last time they were good. This isn't your mom's Vanderbilt or your sister's Vanderbilt because this is a legitimate good Vandy football team who, yeah, they lost to Alabama, but they competed in that game for 3.5 quarters. Like it was a pretty close football game. So, yeah, and listen, guys, our offensive line is bad enough to where I can't, say, hey, this is Texas. If we were better in the trenches, I might be able to say that and get away with it, but the offensive line has made me a little bit gun shy, to say the least.
That's fair. Very fair.
Again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. And I almost forgot. You know what? Give each of us a follow there on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it. That is mine right there. You can find Gerald's podcast as well as his Longhorn, what it's called, the Longhorn Pod right there. Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Please check it out, as well as his X and Blue Sky account. We really appreciate you guys being here. And as always, guys, hook 'em.
Welcome.
College football is even more exciting when you've got some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread, and I've got a 40-plus year track record. 11-0 in the college football playoff for me last year against the money line, 8-3 against the spread. And I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill of Wager Talk is our ace in the hole, show stopper. 7 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick. 28-12 against the spread the last 3 years. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Corey Bratta, Matt Zemek, and Steve Dace. Check out those numbers. Become a YouTube or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and then select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2025 a winner now.